Some films carry wounds before the cameras even roll. Claudine is one of them, a movie that nearly died before it could be finished, and still became one of the most honest portraits of Black American life ever put on screen. These are 12 strange facts that will completely change the way you see this film, including a last-minute replacement, a director who spent 20 years in exile, and one jaw-dropping bonus at the end that absolutely nobody talks about. So speed up with me because the list starts now. Number 1. The original star collapsed on set and died. Before Diahann Carroll ever set foot on that Harlem block, someone else was supposed to be Claudine, and her story is one of the most devastating in American cinema. Diahann Sands was one of the most electrifying stage and screen talents of her generation. She had held her own opposite Alan Alda in The Owl and The Pussycat on Broadway. She'd gone toe-to-toe with Beau Bridges in The Landlord. When Third World Cinema brought her the Claudine script, a story about a welfare mother in Harlem fighting to keep her family intact, Sands didn't just agree to star in it. She helped get the entire project off the ground. Production began in the summer of 1973. Sands showed up ready. Then, after just 1 week of filming, she collapsed on set. The diagnosis was devastating: terminal cancer. Doctors gave her a month to live. Diahann Sands was 39 years old. But even from her hospital bed, she refused to let the film die with her. She picked up the phone and started making calls. Not asking, demanding. "When is Diahann coming?" she told the producers. "Have you sent for her yet? What are you waiting for?" Diahann Sands died on September 21, 1973. She never saw a frame of the finished film, but because of her, the right person was already on her way. Number 2. Producers made Diahann Carroll audition without makeup. Here's a detail that tells you everything about how Hollywood thought and how one actress refused to play along. Diahann Carroll had a problem, at least according to the people holding the checkbooks. She was too glamorous. Coming off 3 seasons as the lead in Julia, Carroll was synonymous with polished, put-together perfection. The press had literally run headlines, asking whether audiences would believe someone who looked like Jackie Onassis playing a welfare mother. So the producers issued a challenge: come in without makeup. No styling, no armor, just Diahann Carroll, plain, standing in a room full of people who already doubted her. She showed up and looked them in the eye. "Give me a chance," she said. "I'm an actress. I'm a singer. I'm from New York City, from the streets of New York." She wasn't performing. She was telling the truth. Carroll grew up in Harlem. She had watched women like Claudine grinding themselves down just to keep the lights on her entire childhood. When the producers saw her stripped of every professional layer, they finally understood. Diahann Carroll wasn't trying to play a character. She was going home. If you are enjoying this, take 2 seconds and leave a like. Subscribe if you want more videos like this. That support really motivates my work and helps a lot with bringing more content. Number 3. Cicely Tyson also turned down the role. Before Diahann Sands ever made that phone call from her hospital bed, the producers had already been turned down by someone else. Someone whose yes would have changed everything. Cicely Tyson was approached first. In 1972, she had just received an Oscar nomination for Sounder, one of the most acclaimed performances of that decade. She was selective in a way that few Black actresses of that era could afford to be. She understood the difference between a film that exploited its subject and one that honored it. When Tyson read the Claudine script, she passed. The exact reason has never been confirmed. Maybe the timing wasn't right. Maybe the material didn't connect. Nobody knows. But that decision sent the producers back to their list, ultimately opening the path for Diahann Sands to get involved and for Diahann Carroll to inherit everything that followed. Think about that chain. Tyson says no, Sands says yes, and fights for the project with everything she has, including the months she had left to live. Carroll walks into that audition room without a stitch of makeup and earns the role of a lifetime. One no set the whole thing in motion. Number 4. Bae, the actor originally cast as the male lead, went on to play Captain Doby on Starsky and Hutch. James Earl Jones wasn't always the man in this role. Before he ever stepped onto the Claudine set, someone else was already wearing that garbage man's uniform. Bernie Hamilton had been cast as Roop, the sanitation worker who falls for Claudine. He was set to star opposite Diahann Sands, a pairing that had been developed and approved. But when Sands collapsed and production had to rebuild entirely, the casting fell apart right along with everything else. Sands had not just recommended Diahann Carroll as her replacement, she had insisted on it. And once Carroll won the role, the producers recast the male lead too. Hamilton was out. James Earl Jones, 1 year away from voicing Darth Vader in Star Wars, was in. Hamilton didn't stumble. The very next year, he landed Captain Harold Dobie on Starsky and Hutch, the gruff, no-nonsense boss trying to keep two reckless detectives from destroying the city. For 4 seasons, he was one of the most recognizable faces on television. And here's one more layer. Bernie Hamilton's brother was Chico Hamilton, the legendary West Coast jazz drummer. When Bernie lost Claudine, he wasn't some unknown guy hitting a rough patch. He came from a family that had already cracked the code. His moment was always coming. Claudine just wasn't it. Number 5. Diahann Carroll and Diahann Sands grew up in the same neighborhood where they shot the film. What happened between Diahann Sands and Diahann Carroll wasn't just a professional handoff. It was something deeper, and the streets where they filmed understood it. Sands and Carroll didn't meet on a set or through a mutual agent. They grew up together. Carroll later recalled, they attended the same elementary school and both went on to the High School of Music and Art in New York City, practically a factory for future legends. Billy D. Williams walked those same hallways at the same time, so when Sands picked up the phone from her hospital bed and called Carroll, she wasn't reaching out to a colleague. She was calling a sister, someone who had been there from the very beginning, someone who understood exactly where Claudine came from, not as an abstraction, but as a lived reality. The film was shot in Harlem around 145th Street and Convent Avenue, the very neighborhood where Diahann Carroll had been raised. She had walked those streets as a girl. She had watched women on those corners fighting the exact battles Claudine fights in the film. Carroll put it plainly, "I have known this woman all my life. We grew up together in the same neighborhood. Claudine and I were sisters, alternate versions of the same little girl." When Sands realized she couldn't finish what she'd started, she knew exactly who to call. Not just because Carroll was talented, because Carroll was already there. Number 6. Claudine was the antidote to blaxploitation. By 1974, black audiences had been force-fed a very specific diet at the movies, and Hollywood had no intention of changing the menu. Shaft had detonated at the box office in 1971. Superfly followed in 1972. The formula was locked in. Sharp-dressed anti-heroes, pimps, pushers, shootouts. The studios took the wrong lesson. Instead of understanding that black audiences simply wanted to see themselves as full human beings on screen, Hollywood heard more of the same and pressed repeat hard. For years. Claudine was shot on location in Harlem during the late summer and fall of 1973. The New York Times put it plainly, Claudine was the first major film about black life to portray the hopes, struggles, defeats, and frustrations of people who weren't super cops, super musicians, super studs, super pimps, or super pushers. No guns, no car chases. Just a woman trying to survive a system built to grind her down, and a man who loves her enough to keep showing up anyway. The film was so widely understood as the counterpoint to blaxploitation that in an episode of Good Times, the parents scan a movie listing for a date night. Everything on offer is exploitation. The one exception? Claudine. Even other black TV shows recognized exactly what this movie represented. Number 7. Curtis Mayfield wrote the soundtrack and Gladys Knight performed it. When you need a score, you go to the best. And in 1973, the best was Curtis Mayfield, a man who had just rewritten the rules of what a film's soundtrack could be. His Superfly album in 1972 hadn't just accompanied a movie, it had outgrown it. The music existed as its own work of art, full of street-level moral complexity, impossible to ignore. It proved the film score could stand completely on its own. Mayfield knew exactly what he had done. For Claudine, Mayfield wrote and produced every song, but made one fascinating choice. He handed the vocals over to Gladys Knight and the Pips, and it paid off. The lead single, On and On, hit number 5 on the Billboard Hot 100, number 2 on the R&B chart, and landed a Golden Globe nomination for Best Original Song. The album reached number 1 on the R&B Albums chart. Tracks like Mr. Welfare Man and The Makings of You didn't just match the film's emotional register, they deepened it. Mayfield understood something many composers miss. The music isn't background. In Claudine, his composition served as a Greek chorus for everything the characters couldn't say out loud. The love they were afraid to trust, the exhaustion they couldn't show in front of their kids, the stubborn hope they refused to give up. The score didn't comment on the film. It lived inside it. Number 8. The director was blacklisted and spent 20 years in exile in France. The man behind the camera on Claudine hadn't just overcome adversity to get there. He had survived the kind of institutional destruction that ended careers forever, and he understood exactly what this film was about. John Barry was on his way up in Hollywood in the early 1950s when the McCarthy-era witch hunt swept through the industry. Director Edward Dmytryk, saving himself by naming others, identified Barry as a communist before the House Un-American Activities Committee. That single act of betrayal was enough. Barry's Hollywood career was finished before it fully began. In 1951, rather than testify and destroy others the way he'd been destroyed, Barry left the country. He spent the next 20 years in France and London, directing films, staging theater, working wherever work was available. Hollywood pretended he'd never existed. Claudine was his return, more than 2 decades later, back on American soil making an American film. And the story he chose to tell about a black woman being crushed by bureaucratic systems designed to punish vulnerability wasn't accidental. Barry had spent 20 years understanding firsthand what it felt like to be ground down by power. He knew how institutions treat people they've decided don't belong. Years later, his experience during the blacklist became the direct inspiration for Robert De Niro's character in the 1991 film Guilty by Suspicion. His suffering became cinematic history twice, once in the living, once in the retelling. Before we keep going, subscribe if you haven't yet. Drop a comment telling me which movie or show you want me to cover next with strange behind-the-scenes facts. I read every single one. Number 9. Claudine was the first film from Third World Cinema Corporation. Most production companies exist to make money. Third World Cinema Corporation was built with a completely different purpose. And what they pulled off with Claudine is remarkable even by today's standards. Founded in 1971, the company's mandate was direct. Change who gets to tell stories on screen and train people from those communities to tell them. The founding roster read like a summit of cultural power. Angela Davis, Rita Moreno, James Earl Jones, producer Hannah Weinstein. These were not people waiting for Hollywood to extend an invitation. They were building their own door. On Claudine, they hired 23 of their 34-person technical crew from the black community. That wasn't a quota. That was the reason the company existed. Funding came from federal programs. Roughly $600,000 from initiatives like the U.S. Manpower Program and Model Cities. Then Nixon won re-election and gutted those programs. The money evaporated. Third World Cinema produced one more film after Claudine, Greased Lightning in 1977, and then they were done. But in that brief window, they proved what Hollywood had spent decades insisting wasn't true, that films made by and for underrepresented communities could be both artistically excellent and commercially successful. Claudine earned $6 million on a budget of just over $1 million. The receipts were right there for anyone willing to look. Number 10. Claudine gave Diahann Carroll her only Oscar nomination, and she never got another. When the Academy Award nominations landed in 1975, Diahann Carroll was on the list for Best Actress. It felt like the industry finally catching up to what audiences had known for years. Consider the record. In 1962, Carroll won the Tony for Best Actress in a musical for no strings, the first black woman ever in that category. In 1968, she took the Golden Globe for Best Actress in a television series for Julia, again the first black woman in a leading TV role. She had been quietly dismantling barriers for over a decade, never getting the full credit she deserved. The performance she gave in Claudine, raw, lived in, stripped of every piece of glamour the industry associated with her, was unlike anything she'd done before. Critics noticed, audiences noticed, and for one moment, the Academy noticed too. She didn't win. Ellen Burstyn took home the statue for Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. But here's the part that stings. Despite a career that kept delivering for another half-century, Claudine remained Diahann Carroll's one and only Oscar nomination. The door swung shut behind her. James Earl Jones, for his part, earned a Golden Globe nomination for Best Actor and won the NAACP Image Award for Outstanding Actor, recognition for a sanitation worker from Harlem, from the man who would soon become the voice of Darth Vader. That's a fact worth sitting with. Number 11. The kid who played the oldest son went on to become a huge TV star. Some actors announced themselves from the very first frame. Lawrence Hilton-Jacobs was one of them, and Claudine was where it all began. Hilton-Jacobs played Charles, Claudine's eldest son, the angriest one, the most politically charged one, the one who watched Roop with open suspicion and wasn't afraid to say it. He brought a raw, coiled intensity to the role that felt completely unperformed. You believed every second of it. The following year, he landed the lead in Cooley High, a film about a Chicago high school basketball star navigating the gap between the life he wants and the world he actually lives in. It became a cult classic, and Hilton-Jacobs was the engine driving it. That same year, he was cast as Freddie Boom Boom Washington on Welcome Back, Kotter, 4 seasons trading scenes with a young John Travolta, becoming one of the most recognized faces on American television. Then came Roots in 1977, then Joe Jackson in The Jacksons, An American Dream in 1992. A full, remarkable career, but it was all poured right here on a Harlem street as the teenage son who didn't trust the new guy. Quick reminder to subscribe if you are enjoying these revelations. And tell me in the comments, do you know any strange fact about this movie that I didn't mention? Let's build the list together. Number 12. Lenny Kravitz's mother had a role in the film. Look closely at the Claudine cast list, and you'll find a name that probably doesn't register at first. It mattered enormously later. Roxie Roker appears as Mrs. Winston, a small role, easy to miss, but Roxie Roker was just getting started. 1 year after Claudine, she was She was cast as Helen Willis on The Jeffersons. That role made history. Helen Willis and her husband Tom became the first interracial married couple depicted on American primetime television. For 11 seasons, Roker helped dismantle a wall that Hollywood had kept firmly in place for decades. Here's the connection you probably didn't see coming. Roxie Roker is Lenny Kravitz's mother, which makes her the grandmother of actress Zoe Kravitz. And she was also the cousin of Today Show weatherman Al Roker. One small supporting role in a 1974 film that almost wasn't made. One family tree linking groundbreaking television, rock royalty, and morning news in a single sentence, almost at the end. And the best is still coming. Subscribe so you don't miss what's next. And drop your city or country in the comments. I want to see how far this video is reaching. Bonus. The script was originally written about a white family. You've been patient, and here is the payoff. The fact that almost nobody talks about. The one that reframes everything. The Claudine screenplay was not written with a black family in mind. Screenwriters Lester and Tina Pine originally crafted the story about a white woman on welfare. The setting wasn't Harlem. It was Watts, Los Angeles. A white woman, a white family. A story about poverty in a California neighborhood. That was the script that circulated. Everything changed when Diahann Sands became attached. Third World Cinema acquired the material and relocated the story. The white family in Watts became a black family in Harlem. The cultural weight transformed completely because poverty in a Harlem housing project under a welfare system that treated its recipients like suspects carried a meaning the original script had never reached. Diahann Carroll confirmed this in a 1974 AFI interview, stating clearly that the script had been rewritten from a story about a white family. Years later, Dan Pine, son of one of the original screenwriters, disputed the claim, insisting the project had always centered on a black family. The truth may never be fully established, but here's what we know. The film that reached theaters was unmistakably black, unmistakably Harlem, unmistakably real. Whatever Claudine started as on the page, it became something that mattered deeply to a generation of people who had never seen their lives treated with that kind of honesty. And those were 12 strange facts about Claudine, a film that almost didn't happen, a film that lost its original star to cancer before production finished, a film made by a company that would survive long enough to produce exactly one more movie, a film directed by a man who'd been exiled from his own country for 2 decades, a film starring an actress Hollywood thought was too polished to play poor. And somehow, against all of it, they made something real. Diahann Sands didn't live to see it, but the film she fought for with her final weeks became a classic. Diahann Carroll earned the 1 Oscar nomination of her career for it. James Earl Jones called it his most satisfying role. And an entire generation of black families saw themselves on screen, not as super cops or super anything, just as people. That's what Claudine is. That's why it still matters. If you made it this far, leave a like, subscribe, and comment which fact surprised you the most? And don't forget to suggest another movie that deserves a list of strange facts. See you in the next video.